Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. My name's Chris Cotter. I'm with LJA Engineering, and I currently serve as the chairman of the board for the North Houston Association, or NHA. On behalf of the NHA board and staff, I'd like to welcome you to the annual NHA Awards Luncheon and annual meeting. We're honored today to recognize with our annual awards, NHA members and community leaders that have made a significant impact on the North Houston region. We're also honored today to have with us the county judges from both Montgomery and Harris counties. After the presentation of our awards, Judges Keogh and Hidalgo will provide us updates from their respective counties. Before we get started with the program, I'd like to ask NHA President Marlisa Briggs to please recognize our program sponsors. Marlisa.
Thanks so much, Chris. It's good to virtually see you all. I'd like to take a minute to thank all of you for joining us. I think we would all prefer to be gathered in person in the same room, but for now, circumstances won't allow that. However, we wanted to show sponsors of today's event our deepest appreciation. So the least we could do was to make sure they had something to enjoy during the program. Take a look at the video. Just to recap, I will let you know who our headline sponsors are today. Those are HAV, HNTB, Parsons, PGAL, and Union Pacific. And our table sponsors today are Dannenbaum Engineering Corporation, Gorandona Engineering Services, Houston Airport Systems, and Lone Star College. We appreciate you. Chris, we're going to hand it over to you for presentations.
My apologies. All right, I am going to present the awards now. Each year, NHA presents awards to leaders in the community and the association. These awards are an important recognition for individuals and companies who go the extra mile. To be clear, these three awards are the 2019 awards. We usually award them in the spring of 2020. We had to delay it because of COVID this year, but they're very important to us today. The first award is NHA's Compass Award. This recognition is specifically for an NHA member who has made significant contribution to NHA's programs and projects. Darren Willer has been a fixture in NHA for many years. starting with participation on and leadership of the Transportation Committee, continuing today where he serves on the board as past chair. And he regularly provides the board with updates on regional transportation issues, including the NHA project for the TxDOT Houston District, a project he's been working on for the past 10 years, actually with TxDOT Houston District and Quincy Allen, our North Star Award winner, which I'll introduce here in a few minutes. During Darren's tenure as the NHA board chair, our then executive director, Paula Lenz, announced her desire to step into retirement. As you know, it's the chairman's responsibility to fill that important role for the association. Darren not only led the search committee in finding our new executive director and now president, Marlisa Briggs, but he also requested to extend his term for a year so that he could help see us through that transition process. Darren remains one of the active leaders on NHA's board. He's committed to doing whatever it takes, whether it's putting out golf signs or sponsor signs at the golf tournament, or it's meeting with elected officials about important issues to our region. Darren's one of our go-to guys. Darren, we are grateful for your countless contributions to NHA and are more than pleased to present you with the 2019 NHA Compass Award. Darren?
Thank you, Chris, Marlisa, and the NHA board. There's so many others that are deserving of this, and I'm truly humbled. Making sure you can hear me okay. So good. So as Chris mentioned, I remember the first transportation committee meeting I went to back in 1988, 22 years ago. And yeah, I want to give a quick shout out to Glenn Graham. I'm not sure if he's on here or not, but at the time, we were at SB Houston Associates, which became PBS&J. Before that, he was with HNTV, where I am now. And one of the things he told me was get engaged with NHA and don't look back. It's one of the most influential areas in the region, and he was right. I mean, NHA has certainly been that for me. And it was then that I met Judge John Lindsay, who's also another fixture. I call him the father of the toll road system here, and many other things in Houston, and also Jack Drake, who was also intimately engaged at the time. Clearly an indicator of how influential NHA is. And being actively engaged with the Transportation Committee and the board was one of the best ways I was able to stay connected with the leadership of North Houston, but also region-wide. It's just it was such a great organization. And so Judge Ed Emmett, who we all know and love, was actually the second executive director for NHA, and he's coming back to help us with our strategic plan here next month, and that's pretty cool. So looking back at some of the influential past recipients, I really am humbled to receive this. Honestly, many of y'all may be on this team's meeting, but Pamela Rocky, Harris County, Chris Cotter, of course, yourself, and your great service, Vesta Ray Galbert. One of the other things we did was a rebranding, and all the branding that you see behind Marlisa there in NHA was really spearheaded by Vesta and her company. David Gornett, Steve Costello, Jack Drake ×2, he got this award, and Glenn Graham, Catherine McCrate, Quincy, over in your shop, and former NHA actually, and then Joe Adams with the UP, just a great tenure of recipients. I'm truly humbled, and thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Darren. Very deserving of the award. Next is our Environmental Impact Award. This award recognizes an individual, company, or project that has preserved or protected the environment in North Houston. The hardworking people at the Harris County Flood Control District have contributed to the health and safety of both Harris and Montgomery counties for more than 80 years. Today, NHA would specifically like to recognize flood control for their work in the Cypress Creek watershed. In 2018, Harris County voters overwhelmingly approved a $2.5 billion bond fund for flood risk mitigation projects across the county, and specifically in our backyard in the Cypress Creek, Greens Bayou, and Spring Creek watersheds. These funds have enabled the flood control district to move forward at an unprecedented pace on a variety of projects, all designed to reduce flooding risk and help mitigate future impacts. At the same time, they've continued to focus on community engagement, providing proactive updates to watershed residences and stakeholders, and working closely with organizations like ours to ensure community input is considered during every step of each project's life cycle. Overall, the Flood Control District has continued to make a positive impact on Harris County and specifically North Houston. We're proud to recognize their work in the Cypress Creek watershed with the 2019 Environmental Impact Award. Today from Harris County Flood Control, we have with us Jonathan Holley, Environmental Services Department Manager, who will accept the award and make a few remarks on the behalf of Flood Control. Jonathan?
Thanks, Chris, and thank you all for this award. As Chris mentioned, my name is Jonathan Holley, and I lead the Environmental Services Department for the Harris County Flood Control District. Just want to double check y'all can all hear me okay? We're so proud to receive this award as it truly represents and reflects the fundamental values of the Flood Control District. Our mission is to build flood damage reduction projects that work with appropriate regard for community and natural values. And that's where my team and I enter the equation. Our job is to provide input on each project from an environmental perspective, helping to ensure that we consider the natural values of the area, such as wildlife, wetlands, stormwater quality, green space, and opportunities for recreational features by our partners. We strive to remain sensitive to the environmental resources such as tree removal, migratory bird patterns, but we want to make sure we implement the critical control infrastructure that the area needs. One example that we've been able to integrate flood reduction with the natural features is our work that we're doing on Pilo Gully near Vintage Park area. We're utilizing natural vegetation and planting trees to stabilize the channel and to incorporate it within the Kickarello Misher Preserve. Another example is the Little Cypress Creek Frontier Program, which we include enhancements to the natural streams as we expand their capacity so that there is no loss in this important environmental value. But we don't do this alone. As Chris said, we rely on input from the residents and the community leaders to make sure we're doing this and looking at the full picture. Our executive leadership and communications team takes the input very seriously from our partners, and it's not only a requirement of the 2018 bond program, but we know it's the right thing to do. So we seek out input and feedback throughout each project's life cycle, and our projects teams take all comments into consideration when planning and designing the projects. At the end of the day, our job is to balance the hard engineering with the community and natural considerations, which hopefully leads to a project that reduces flood risks and better shares our community. Even during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have continued our commitment to community feedback and hosting more than a dozen virtual community engagement meetings, with many more to come. We're continuing to move forward with many projects in the North Houston area and pushing forward and doing our part to mitigate the flood risks across the region. Thank you again for this recognition. We're so proud to serve Harris County and look forward to many successful partners and projects in the future. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, Harris County Flood Control District. The last of our three awards to be presented today is the North Star Award. This award recognizes an individual who has made a long-term significant contribution to the region, and this year's recipient is undoubtedly, he fits that picture. Quincy Allen was born and raised in Houston and began serving Houston's mobility needs in 1985 at the start of his career with TxDOT. He quickly climbed the ranks at TxDOT, becoming the Houston District Engineer in 2015. Of the 25 districts in TxDOT, the Houston District is the largest, most registered vehicles, highest number of vehicle miles traveled. In short, it's a huge responsibility. Earlier this year, Quincy was again promoted to one of the critical headquarters level positions to serve as the Director of District Operations statewide. In this role, Quincy oversees planning, design, construction, and maintenance of TxDOT's transportation systems for the 25 districts across the state. As most of our audience knows, Quincy, there's not many of our regional highways in North Houston that Quincy's fingerprints are not on. His positive impact on our area's mobility and growth is evident, and we're grateful for his leadership and vision. Two of the most recent examples are the Grand Parkway segments, F&G, and the North Houston Highway Improvement Program project. Quincy's also known for leadership in the community. He and his sons, Will and Ben, are all Eagle Scouts. Quincy received the Silver Beaver Award, a coveted council level distinguished service award by the Boy Scouts of America. I am honored to present the 2019 North Star Award to Mr. Quincy Allen. Quincy.
Chris, thank you so much. I'm like Darren, I'm really thankful for the team that I've been involved with at TxDOT, and they certainly should share in the credit for all good things that I've been involved with. I'm very proud of their work and how dedicated they are and how willing they are to take on challenging projects. I feel like I've always been close, especially close to North Houston. When I started at TxDOT, Mr. Holsworth hired me, and I don't know if he's passed through your walls, but that's the same Holsworth that's on the sign out there near where the blimp base used to be. Actually, I think that's his father or grandfather. But anyway, long story short, first road job I was on was I-45 over Spring Creek, and I worked up and down I-45 on the north side there until I guess I was sent down to the main office. But we did a lot of work, obviously, on the Grand Parkway, on I-45 itself. We built the Beltway interchange. I worked with great leaders, obviously Mr. Holsworth, Charles Gaskin, and I think Gary Treach, this district engineer, was a very strong mentor for me. Anyway, and now obviously the district is working on some on I-45 downtown, and we're excited about that project. Obviously, we've got a lot of stakeholders there and folks that are making sure that we touch everything that needs to be touched, and we certainly appreciate the public involvement on that project as well. You can't have a job like this without just, tremendous family. My dad worked at TxDOT. More importantly, my wife and sons have been there just with me every step of the way. This work often calls you away at night and on weekends, and they've been so supportive, and I'm very thankful to them. They've learned a lot. They can answer most of your questions probably better than I can. And Janet's a big fan of Judge Lindsay, and they've done some things in the Methodist Church, and he's one of her heroes, and I think a lot of him too. So for all of that, I almost forgot to thank the judges. Obviously, Judge Keogh and Hidalgo have been great partners to TxDOT, and we're thankful for their connection to our projects and our work. And we look forward to not only projects we have ongoing, but certainly now we're doing a big study on I-45 going north all the way to Conroe. And so we'll be having more public involvement there. And obviously you guys are very well aware of what we're doing downtown, and we're thankful for that project and those partnerships. So I'd just like to thank North Houston again, Darren, for your work on our projects and for your friendship. Chris, you're awesome. Melissa and everybody else, it's just been tremendous. Thank you for this honor.
Thank you, Quincy. We appreciate everything that you've done for the North Houston region and the relationship that we've been able to have with you over the years, working on transportation issues in our region. So thank you very much. So that concludes our awards for today, and I want to thank you all for helping us honor these North Houston leaders. Next, we have our keynote speakers, Montgomery County Judge Mark Keogh and Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo. Judges, I really want to thank both of you in advance for participating in our virtual awards program and helping NHA make this event a success. First, we're going to hear from Judge Keogh, who will then be followed by Judge Hidalgo. During the program, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat, and we'll try to field those and forward those to the judges during Q&A toward the end of the presentation. So let's start with Montgomery County Judge Mark Keogh, Judge Keogh was first elected to the office of county judge in 2018. In addition to serving as county judge, he is also the senior pastor of the Woodlands Bible Church. Prior to his role as county judge, he served as a member of the Texas House of Representatives for 2 terms, serving the southern portion of Montgomery County. And before running for public office in 2014, he spent 26 years in the private sector in the automotive industry. Judge Keogh holds master's degrees from Dallas Theological and Grace Theological Seminaries, as well as a bachelor's degree from Cedarville University. Judge Keogh currently serves on the board of several organizations: the Woodlands Road Utility District, the Montgomery County Public Health District, the Gulf Coast Rail District, HGAC, Montgomery County Toll Road Authority, and Montgomery County's Probation and Bail Bond Board. On the personal side, the Keoghs have called Montgomery County home since 1996. The judge enjoys hunting, fishing, shooting sporting clays. I know that for sure. He's the father of 4 and the grandfather of 3. So please help me welcome Judge Keogh. Judge Keogh, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to your remarks.
Chris, thank you so much. And I just appreciate it. And it's exciting that I'm fixing to be the grandfather of 4. We've got 3 boys and a young lady on the way. Rachel will be here at the end of the year, so that's very exciting for us. But thank you for your kind introduction. It's an honor to be here today and to speak. I do want to congratulate Darren and Jonathan and Quincy. You guys are awesome, and all the work that you've done for the area, the community. Appreciate it so much, and how you guys have this ability to bring people together and make things happen. It's always a pleasure to be on the same platform with my colleague, Judge Hidalgo, and look forward to her comments as well. So it's good to see you. But I wanted to, as I thought about this today, and as I thought about where we were headed, I thought, you know, if I could show you a place that today, where the economy, as I see it, and the numbers seem to indicate, is booming, where our property taxes are lower this year than they were last year, and last year lower than the previous year, even with the combination of appraisals and with our tax rate, where our new home growth is up over last year, where the increase in the value of the homes are up 4.3%. The average sale, according to the Houston Real Estate Association, that average sale in less than 64 days. If I could show you a place where the school systems really do meet the highest standards, where the graduation levels are off the charts, kids going into higher education. If I could show you a place where sales tax is an increase this year over the previous year, boy, 2.3%. Would that be a place where you might consider living, where you may even consider building a business? Because that is the condition of Montgomery County as it stands today. As you mentioned, I'm Mark Keogh, and I am the county judge here in Montgomery County. Some time ago, I had the opportunity to speak and give a condition of the county back in the beginning of the year. In February, I spoke twice, and in doing a county update, I thought, well, you know, this will be easy. Let's just go ahead and I'll just look over what we talked about in the spring, and let's just kind of see where we are, and let's just present this. But I think that and as we will talk about transportation, I think the financial outlook for the county, our credit rating, and our economic development, I think in the bigger scheme of things, to me anyway, that the elephant in the room is not so much where we started this year, but the real question is, what is the state of our counties in our region now that we've had to deal with COVID-19? Because this is a constant awareness on all of our minds for all practical purposes. As I said, this is really, for me anyway, is the elephant in the room. And as I looked at this, and without, I don't want to bore you with a bunch of statistics and whatnot, and heaven knows I've got them all laid out here on the table with me. But I think that as we think about some things that we had planned to do, Before we get into that, let's just talk a little bit about and run over some dates. And Judge Hidalgo, as you're listening, you can certainly identify with these things because you and I were both pushed into a situation that neither one of our counties had seen in many, 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 many years, and have had the opportunity to work through this COVID-19. You know, on March 9th, Italy shuts down. On March 10th, President Trump, he comes along and closes the borders at the end of January and said the number one priority is all of our health. On March 12th, I came out with an emergency declaration, 250 maximum gathering, which shortly dropped within just days from 250 to 50 to 10. By the time we get to a place where so many things are happening so quick, it was one day right after the other. We almost couldn't keep up with it. But I concluded that based upon what our health district had told us, they told us that by the end of April, we were going to have 100,000 cases of COVID. We were probably going to have 1,000 deaths at 1%. And this was the data that we were operating with. And as I came up through Harris County and I saw what was going on, it looked like a ghost town. And as I came into Montgomery County, it looked like a ghost town. And I thought, you know, Montgomery County isn't going to save the economy. We need to save lives. And so we took that position. I went ahead and I came out with my order. But one of the things that I did is I watched the order, because we've been kind of accused of, hey, you guys aren't dealing with this. It's been said you're not dealing with the science here. And, you know, you need to pay attention to that. And I'm just kind of real basic. I look at numbers and I look at what our health district is telling us. And as I watched, I looked and saw about 10% of active cases were in the hospital and everybody else was sent to the house. Since that time, I have looked back on the numbers. And do you know that on April 17th, when I took my order down, that in Montgomery County, we had a 99% recovery rate from COVID. The governor looked like he was moving in that direction to open things up, and he came out with a plan. And he said in his opening statements on that plan that you're probably going to see an increase in cases. But even so, he said they would watch it. And sure enough, they did. They began to shut back down. And what I noticed that it just didn't seem to me, no matter how many cases we talked about having, no matter what the active cases were against the actual in the hospital cases, you know, we talked about flattening the curve. We talked about stopping the spread, all of these various things that you all remember. And you know what? As of yesterday, here we are still, as on April 17th, when I took down my order, and yesterday at a 99% recovery rate. Actually, it's 98.8, but we'll round it up to 99. We were fact checked by a local newspaper and radio station, and they found out that we were correct. We were inundated by contact tracing, and you know, we had closed down the economy, and you all know what the rest of took place. And I have to tell you that as county judge, there were times when I was so disappointed with what judgments had been made for the state, what judgments had been made for us, whether it had to do with masks or whether it had to do with shutting down certain groups that and picking and choosing, and those businesses that were qualified to stay open and those that weren't, and all of the things that we had to deal with. I spent weeks talking business owners off the ledge, interpreting what these things were. But I have to tell you, during this time, it was been said that Montgomery County had sacrificed public health for the economy and business. And I want to tell you that is just not what has happened. It is just not what has happened. As a matter of fact, our infections per thousand are some of the lowest in the region right now today. And we have followed the science. I'm real basic. I look at the statistics. The numbers don't lie. And if I look at 1,647 people that have the coronavirus in our county, and I see that there are 28 of them in the hospital, most of which are just an observation, well, and then I see 99% recovery, I can't help but think there are other motivational factors which we can talk about at another time. But for our benefit today, in all of this, we have taken the position, I have taken the position of doing whatever we can to stay open, to push forward, and to eliminate as many restrictions as we can that many counties, I think, have perpetrated upon the people. So we ended the stay-at-home order. We reopened the county. And you know what I noticed was the people were listening to what our governor was telling us without us coming out with an order. They were listening to our order that had to do with our masks. One of the things I noticed, I'll have to tell you, I went into a restaurant. I put my mask on, was escorted over to the seat. I sat down, got up from there, went and washed my hands, came back, sat down, and I watched everybody else that came in, and not one person that I saw, maybe somewhere, went ahead and exercised any of the other things. So as you know, there's been this overemphasis on all these things. But how does that relate to where we are in the state of the county right now? After going through all this, because I have to tell you, do you know that if you were to go to our permit department across the board, our permits are up 30% in terms of housing. That is remarkable. And then we sat down as a court and we hammered out, according to HB2, everything we could to figure out a way to be sensitive to the community and what they were going through and all of the issues associated with the loss of jobs and the trying to get monies from the government and dealing with all of the CARES funds and all these various things that we had to deal with. But you know that we hammered it out. In the previous year, we did the effective tax rate. No joke. As the appraisals went up in the county, we dropped the rate to match it. This year, we attempted to do that, and you know what? We came in under that. And I have to tell you, according to Barb Sadler, who was here for 20 plus years, as you all know him and remember him, he said it's the first time in the history of the county. If that's the case, that goes all the way back to 1837, December 14th. We were still a republic when we became a county. And by the way, we are still and continue to be the birthplace of the Texas flag. So that's all very exciting. But our new home growth is up over last year. That's remarkable given the situation. And when the value of the home goes up 4.3% and we're able to drop the rate so that we don't have an increase by just utilizing, we did not give everybody a cost of living increase and raise this year. We did not sacrifice one service to any of our law enforcement, our fire, any of these things. And I have to tell you, it is pretty amazing, and the community is ecstatic with us moving forward and keeping the taxes, county taxes. As you know, there are other things in this whole realm besides just the county taxes. But we're able to, but was, I think, most remarkable in the midst of all this, I got a text from the county of, the city manager, my friend Paul, earlier this month, and thanked me for our position as a county on some of our restrictions and whatnot, because our sales tax is up over last year, 2.3% year over year, which to me is remarkable given the situation. So in the scheme of things, our transportation, our update and our thoroughfare plan, we are moving forward with that. We met the other day in Commissioner's Court. We voted to continue on that. We are now setting up opportunity here shortly to have input from our stakeholders. Each of the commissioners are doing that. We're also setting up opportunity for input from the citizens. We expect that by the mid-2021, we should have a plan in place working with TxDOT and HGAC that will take us all the way to 2040. It's very exciting that we've been able to do that. That was something that was very important to me as I ran for this position. And so far, we've been able to do that. We have to tell you that we did pass last year through the Texas legislature the issue having to do with our ethics commission for elected leaders, and that is in place and is working. So far, so good. Everybody is doing well, and we haven't had to exercise any of their issues that they might have with some of our elected leaders. And so I have to tell you, the state of the county is great. I know I have a very short period of time and I want to leave time for questions, but in spite of all the things that we have been through, I think that Montgomery County is, I did want to say this about unemployment. You know, we were at 13.8% unemployment at the very beginning of this deal back in the March, April. And Judge, I know you experienced the same thing across the board, become very painful. At the end of July, we were at 8.1, August at 6.9, and end of September 30th at 6.9. And I believe at present pace, with the things that we're doing, with the way that we're operating in governance and the freedoms that the people have to move forward, I believe that that should be down below 5%, certainly by the end of the year, and back to that 3.8 or below that we enjoyed before all this happened. So that's, I think, in just the scheme of things, in the big picture, this is the condition of the county as it relates to what we've been through. And I don't know, Chris, you want to open up now for questions, or if you want the judge to speak, and then at the end we can open it up for questions at the same time. Your call.
Why don't we let Judge Hidalgo speak, and then we will open it up for questions for both judges at the end. So thank you, Judge Keough, for your remarks. Appreciate it very much. So next, we have Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo. Judge Hidalgo leads Harris County's governing body, being the first woman elected Harris County judge and the second woman to ever serve on Harris County Commissioner's Court. Judge Hidalgo and the 4 Harris County commissioners oversee a $4.3 billion budget that helps fund key county services and institutions. By state law, Judge Hidalgo serves as the county's Director of Emergency Management, leading the Harris County Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. In addition to her formal duties, she plays an important advocacy role for Harris County. Judge Hidalgo believes that our region will remain competitive only through proactive and creative leadership on issues like flood control, transportation, criminal justice reform, and education. She's committed to ensuring that Harris County government is transparent, accessible, accountable to every resident in Harris County. She also wants Harris County to be a place where everyone can attain the American dream. Judge Hidalgo, thank you for being here with us today, and we look forward to your remarks. Judge?
Oh, thank you so much, Chris and Judge Keough. It's so good to see you. And it's been a pleasure to work with you, Judge, throughout this crisis. It really, I think we've got beautiful leadership throughout the region, and we're just lucky to be able to work together. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I'm grateful to the organization. I remember last year, I think I just returned from Austin. The legislature was in session, and it was a long day. And then I was heading to an NHA event, and so I was a little bit tired, I have to admit. But when I walked in, folks were so welcoming, and you all were so incredibly kind and welcoming to me and Commissioner Garcia. I remember Judge Lindsay was there, and I miss being able to crisscross the county and visit with all of you guys in person. So it's nice to see folks virtually, and I know that we're going to be back to that soon, hopefully very soon. For now, though, we adjust. You know, we've got to. We're good at that. And so I've been asked to talk about 3 topics: flood control, transportation, and economic opportunity. And so I figured I'd discuss those and keep it short so we can have enough time for questions. So on the flood control piece, that's a place, right, where we've learned to adjust, and we're working really hard to try and do better. And it's not easy. The work continues. We're not done, but it's already paying off. And it was great to see after the recent Hurricane Beta that Brace Bayou did its job. You know, the community in Maryland was hit by those heavy rains. We're told by the engineers that if Brace Bayou hadn't been widened in the way that it was if those detention basins hadn't been built. And that project isn't even done building, but it's getting there. It's farther than it's ever been. We've been working very, very effectively on it. That probably thousands of homes would have flooded, certainly thousands of people. And so I think it's good to stop for a minute and celebrate those kinds of victories, to see that the work that so many folks are doing and so many folks from the professions that are part of this organization are helping us advance all throughout the county. This time it was that area of town, Brace Bayou, but in the future, you know, once these rains of this level come and hit us, we know that we're doing better. The concern, of course, is if there were another Harvey, and we can't just hope that there won't be one, right? And so that's the question that we continue to ask, and we've established our infrastructure resilience task force in the county, which is an interdepartmental group that has been tasked with specific deadlines to come back at, okay, what is our flood challenge? How are we going to define success? And what investments will that require? Some of that is going to be land preservation, as we've been doing. Some of it's going to be buyouts, which we're already doing. Very, very tough decisions, but we have to if we want to make sure that folks want to continue to come here, that this is the destination for young people as opposed to the place young people leave from. And we can maintain that if we have that resilience, and if we're forward thinking with recognizing the enormity of the problem, but also the fact that we're not powerless against it. So they're working on that. We're going to help us figure out additional investments. We're going to call on you all. You know, we're going to need all hands on deck as we figure out the next phase of this. And in the meantime, we are pushing all our projects as quickly as possible. We're pushing our drainage projects from Harvey, from Imelda, the areas that we know flooded not because of they needed a wider bayou or a deeper bayou, but because the drainage wasn't up to par and where they're outside of any city, so that we control the drainage. We're trying to be really smart also in having uniform work throughout the county, because the water doesn't respect the boundaries. So we've asked all the cities that are receiving flood bond funds from Harris County to adopt detention requirements, not even as stringent as ours, but at least to standard, at least to federal standards, national standards, so that we're not flooding folks downstream when we build. And I know that we're constantly in communication with Montgomery County, with our neighbors, to figure out, you know, we're all in this together. We've got to be smart about it. We can't just pretend like the problem is going to go away, because it's going to come back and bite us. And so I'm happy that we're on that path. So that's on the flood control side. On the transportation side, big issue we're focused on, and this one particularly with the city of Houston, is the North Highway improvement project, the I-45 expansion. And we have been working with TxDOT a lot on that, trying to make sure that we get a highway that is going to advance mobility more broadly, not just more cars, right? But what people need. We've done surveys, we've heard from folks that they want to see transit. We saw it with COVID. A lot of people that weren't getting tested, we tried to figure out why, and a key reason was transportation. We think everybody has a car, but they don't, and so we have to think about those things, at least having the opportunity for bus rapid transit, and certainly having impacts that aren't going to harm the community as we build these big projects. So we're working on that. We're working with the city, working with TxDOT to make sure that NHHIP is a good project, because it's going to be with us for decades. Of course, the Metro Bond we're helping implement, so that'll be an exciting step. Again, it's not a complete solution to the transportation challenges of the region, and that's why we're working in the county to assess those transportation challenges, to go and evaluate exactly what are the needs, and in all of our neighborhoods, where do we need to build more sidewalks? Where do we need to build bike lanes? Where do we need to build roads? And where do we need to build transit? And how are we going to do that? And so it's great. That's underway. It's a massive study. We're evaluating every single road in the county, and from that is there's gonna be a vision, a comprehensive vision that we can move on, so that a few years from now we won't have what some companies have told me about, where they have young people that say, well, I just don't want to buy a car, so I don't want to move over there, or that would rather go somewhere else. So that's what I want to make sure, is that we are thriving, that we're modern, and that we're up to par with communities around the world. And so that's the transportation piece. And finally, economic opportunity. And Judge Keough, you were talking about this. It is heartbreaking, and it is tied to COVID. It's impossible not to discuss COVID, where we are right now, and the challenges, the reverberations that the virus has had all throughout, not just our counties, not just our state, but the entire world. And for us, the impact, of course, is economic as well. So we've worked very hard to try and support our community through these tough times. We invested local dollars in over $30 million in local general fund dollars for direct financial assistance for our communities that they could use in whatever they needed, and something like what the federal government did. It's been proven by many studies that that's really the most effective way to provide aid. And then all the CARES Act dollars that we received, turn it back around to get out the door. So total, we've offered over $70 million in direct financial assistance for communities. We targeted the most vulnerable people who didn't receive other aid, who don't qualify for other aid, and for them to use on childcare, on food, on rent, whatever it is that they need. We've invested also over $40 million on rental assistance and working with tenants and with landlords so that can move forward. Another $40 million in small business assistance, so that we're supporting those businesses that are the core of our community. We've put $30 million to narrow the digital divide, something that already existed. And in a way, a silver lining from this crisis is that we're all really focusing on those digital assets, connectivity, something that we knew we had to do, but we kind of, and with so many priorities, it just hadn't been addressed to the extent that it needed to be. And so I'm hoping that this crisis is a time where we're going to make it happen. So we've invested those dollars to make sure that the school districts don't have to pull from their funds to get the kids the computers they need, the hotspots they need. Of course, we're recognizing now you can have a computer and a hotspot and not have a cell tower nearby. And so we're working on that, really assessing specifically where are the areas that don't have connectivity, because in today's day and age, we can't go without that kind of connectivity, not just for the students, but the parents as well, the entire family. So $30 million there. We've put over $5 million for workforce development for domestic violence victims and groups, and for childcare. So we continue to evaluate, figure out what is the smartest investment of these funds to make sure that we mitigate the impact and hopefully come out stronger in certain areas. One area is this digital divide. Another area, homelessness, for example. It's the first time we're truly addressing it comprehensively. The city of Houston, the county, have put over $60 million toward an innovative homelessness program that's not about housing people, for a few days and then sending them back out to the street, or sending them back to the jail so that they can go back to the street after that. But instead, it is a program that's going to make sure that folks are paired with long-term sustainable housing, which, as we know, saves us money, is actually effective, and with mental health treatment, those who need it, but the ability to follow and track folks through the system and not just give them temporary treatment, a temporary place to be, and then back out to the street and back out to the same cycle. So I'm excited that the community's coming together to fight the impacts of this. It's hard. It's an intractable challenge, but we're going to keep pushing, and I'm hopeful that that we'll come out of this, that our next generation is going to be ready. They're resilient. They've had a hard time with this too, the folks that have had to adapt the way they do school, the way they interact with others, but I'm hopeful that sometime from now, we'll just look back at this year and tell folks about what it was like to live through this virus and how we made it through and how we adjusted and we made these investments, and it was hard and it was awful, and if it wasn't health, it was the economy. But we made it through because we're resilient. So those are the 3 points I was asked to cover. So I'll leave it there. And again, thank you. Congratulations. I understand that we have some award winners as well. And so congratulations on that. And I'm excited to answer some questions.
Thank you, Judge Hidalgo. As a reminder, we will take now some questions for the judges. If you have any, please pop them into the chat and I'll forward them to the judges. So the first question, and this really goes to both judges, you know, I think that the world is going to change permanently in ways from COVID, from a standpoint of there's going to be a lot more folks who work from home on a full-time basis because we've learned that it can work and it works well. That's going to impact the region in several different ways, most notably, maybe less traffic. But I was wondering from each of your perspectives, how you feel that permanent changes will impact your counties and county operations. And I'll go first, I guess, to Judge Keough. Judge Keough?
You know, that's I think is a very cogent question. We're recently looking at our standards in terms of our standard and our AAA rating and our bond rating and whatnot. One of the questions that was asked to us in this whole deal is, hey, you guys obviously are going to be impacted by this, and we have so much, especially in our South County, where you're going to be without people, going to have a lot of empty space. And we know that we're going to have to deal with that. But I have to tell you, what is amazing is in our answers to them, and as our team answered, especially with Moody in their report for our rating, was that they're seeing others that are moving into these places. And we anticipate, as we have historically, that there will be a replacement of business. And as business continues to come into this pretty user-friendly business environment, I think the only way to outrun it, though, is that we have to remain business friendly. You know, every year, we just recently went over our tax abatement process, and we looked very hard at that and where we could enhance that. And of course, you know, we're required to every 2 years to do that, and where we can take dormant property and turn it into a value added employee generating type space. But, you know, Chris, this is, COVID is not just about, I think, us just right here. But if you take Amazon, I mean, that is the largest retailer on the planet, doesn't even have a storefront. And they have just increased dramatically through this whole series of events. But here's what must happen. We must give the entrepreneur the ability and the freedoms to act and operate so that he can use his gifts and abilities and creativity in this environment to move forward. We must release some of these restrictions. We must not pick winners and losers as it relates to this whole COVID issue, especially given the numbers. And what I have found here in our county is that as we do that, man, they pick up the ball and they will go with it. And that entrepreneurial mindset is what's going to drive this deal, and it's going to drive it for the next few decades, I believe, as we move forward. But having a business-friendly environment, which, as Judge Hidalgo certainly knows, is that it has to involve transportation, of which is a strong issue for us right now as well.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and it's definitely something's inevitably going to change. And I agree with Judge Keough, is the hope is with our enterprising spirit, with the innovations here, that we will see perhaps a shift. Perhaps we can't predict exactly, who will take over some places that perhaps won't be as used anymore. But I think we can bet that somebody will. It will change, though. I think, we've thought about a lot how the role of downtown may change. We've got some folks who are working with us at the county as we've had to add staff and support this response, who are elsewhere, right? And it's great. You know, it's easier to work from home. They're not coming into the office, and they never have. You know, some of our epidemiological team, some of those, they're elsewhere. They're not in the central office, and they're doing just fine. And so some of the policies we've already changed is make the work from home policies at the county more flexible. Part of what I've been trying to focus on is how to recruit the best people. Sometimes the new generation, you may present them with a fantastic retirement package, but what they want is loan forgiveness. We need the smartest people. If anything has shown us this crisis. And so part of that is having that flexibility. When we come out of this, I believe we're going to see more and more people who are just not going to want to commute, you know, or who have a significant other that they do long distance with. And so, you know, rather than be here, they'll be over there. So it's something that we also have to be flexible on at the county level. And I'm curious to see, though, what the impacts are going to be. And I'm hopeful that the impacts, at least on the county workforce, will be positive, and then and that the adjustments to our downtown areas and our typical hubs will be positive. But I think we're going to have to watch, and then we'll respond accordingly.
Thank you, judges. I do have another question here. One of the biggest interfaces between the two counties are watersheds, the Spring Creek watershed and the San Jacinto River watershed specifically. I know that there is coordination going on between the two counties. I'd like to know from your perspective, in coordinating the analysis, the design, the flood mitigation efforts for those two watersheds, two things. What are we doing right? And then what could we be doing maybe better, in your opinions? And Judge Keough, I will again go to you first.
You know, after Harvey, I jumped on an airplane and I flew from Lake Conroe down to Lake Houston, because I wanted to see what was going on here. What was the extent of this flood? I was still in the House of Representatives at the time. And, you know, there are a number of issues at stake here. I think one of those that I have addressed this somewhat with the judge and with others from the Harris County and the city of Houston is that we are looking very hard, I think now more than ever, of where we are building things. You know, when you think about what has gone on over in Kingwood, and you think about what has, especially since the time of Harvey, and then you think about the fact that there has been no dredging or many real maintenance during the time since 1953 in the building of Lake Houston, that is moving forward. That is opening up. They are working towards accommodating the water through the dam as it floods out of Montgomery County. I want two things to say about that. This is not Montgomery County water. This is Texas water, just so everybody knows. And but the fact of the matter is that the water's been flowing down there for the last 100,000 years in that direction. And so I look at who has authorized the building of these things and whatnot, without assigning any blame at all. I think we're doing well to kind of put a screeching halt on allowing or the things taking place that are not adequately handled as we go ahead and build. We must do that. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have these issues, especially with issues of subsidence. I have had a chance to, as I here in our county, we are in the middle of a couple of studies as well with a number of people, and we've listened to the first round. We've worked with San Jacinto River Authority, and as it relates to the Spring Creek watershed, pretty much, which does affect that crossover as well, just like San Jacinto and West Fork over in the Spring Spring Creek watershed area on the South County, because you're dealing with the same issue there. The difficulty is The fact of the matter is we want to be good neighbors. We are good neighbors, and we must work together because most of the flooding that is taking place is coming across our area and is flowing onto Harris County and is impacting them. So there continues, it is our continued needs to be and continues to do through a number of agencies and organizations that we are in the process of doing the studies. I think, Jonathan, you know which ones I'm talking about, especially as it relates to the Spring Creek watershed, and that's how we're moving forward on this point. I feel like we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, Judge, you mentioned Kingwood, and I think that the May floods of last year are a perfect example of where we need to improve. And it was a certain area, a neighborhood that hadn't flooded before, and it flooded, and the sense is it was because of a development that was being done just next to them that had eliminated the ability for the water to seep in and had not built the detention that ought to have been built. But it's because the standards were too lax. They weren't required to build that detention. And so we're trying to work with the city of Houston. It's in their ETJ, even though I think the property is actually in Montgomery County, to see if we can make that area a part of our flood bond as a partnership project. But that's where we're trying to be smarter in Harris County and say, fool me once, but we're not going to make the same mistake again. And so our condition is we will invest those funds so long as those new requirements are adopted in that ETJ, because otherwise, we'll put money to make that area into a detention basin so that that community can be protected. But then the next time it rains, you're going to have a new development that doesn't follow the parameters, and it's going to flood a different neighborhood. And so I think that's what's hard, and it's the eternal question of thinking about the long term as opposed to the short term gains. And unfortunately, it's just human nature to not do that, and that's the reason we band together, try and have someone look at the big picture. And so that's what we're trying to figure out for our region. I know our staffs are in touch from the Harris County Flood Control District and the Montgomery County side to see, ultimately our fates are tied. But yes, it's more what's built north. It flows, it flows through us.
Sure.
And so how do we have that ability to make sure that we continue to thrive? Because ultimately that's going to help the region, right? If this whole area becomes a place that just floods every time, it's going to hurt the neighbors. It's going to hurt the economic engine of the region. But that's going to take continued coordination from the leadership. So we're trying to, at least where we can control in our area and the relationships we have, to really draw a firm line that we're going to break out of this loop of just flooding and building the same way and flooding the same way and building the same way. We got to be smarter, and it doesn't mean you don't grow anymore. It just means you grow smart and you're transparent about which areas are at risk. So that's what we're working on that end. I know the Army Corps and our group 2 in our analysis, we're trying to just map and predict, what are the different impacts of these kinds of floods accept the fact that we are seeing these 100-year and 500-year storms more often. So we're adopting the new rainfall standards, but also recognizing that even those, even under the new rainfall standards, Harvey shouldn't, the rains we've had is still a lot. And so we just have to be realistic that, okay, we're having this level of rain this often, and that's the degree to which we need to be prepared.
All right.
All right, thanks, judges. I'm gonna close with one last question to both of you to have the opportunity to make some concluding remarks here. And the question is, let's put aside COVID. Let's put aside 2020. Our region is projected to grow significantly still over the next 10, 20, 30 years. And so I'd really like to hear from both of you about what you are focused on from the standpoint of preparing your county for that kind of growth. In Montgomery County, it's watching that county becoming more and more suburbanized and even urbanized. in Harris County, it's watching the county becoming so much more densely populated because the counties are going to grow. So we'll start with Judge Keel in Montgomery County and conclude with Judge Hidalgo in Harris County. But what are you doing now to plan for that long-term growth with your counties?
Have the camera on?
Turn it on.
Can you see me? Am I still? Okay, here we go. I think the number one thing that we're doing, and as a matter of fact, in Commissioner's Court, we updated where we needed to go was our Montgomery County Thoroughfare Plan. We worked with TxDOT and HJC in 2016 and came up with a thoroughfare plan. And at the time, that was what we needed to do. We have updated that. And I think what is significant about this is that this plan that we are now working on with a number of agencies, but specifically with BG&E, who is working with our stakeholders, as well as our citizen involvement, we're working hard that we will have individual precinct meetings beginning in November and in mid-December. We'll have another project update meeting by the January of 21st, and then we'll have interactive public meetings in groups with staff members that are going to take place in Precinct 1 and Precinct 3 by March 21st. And it is our plan to have this thing in place where we're headed up through the 2040s by the end of the middle of the summer next year. So that is top of mind awareness for us right now. Well, as you know, we're not going to draw business. We are not going to draw individuals here if they can't move throughout the county. We have taken some criticism, as you know, concerning our view on tolls and toll roads. I will tell you that I'm not anti-toll roads. I've never been anti-toll roads. What I'm anti is toll roads that become a revenue source, and our team here and our commissioners, because they voted to remove the 242, but that we at least have an exit strategy when we go ahead and that we do this. But our commitment is to do whatever it takes, whether we do see obviously bonds in the future that we're going to have to implement in order to do this. But our primary objective right now, top of mind awareness, is to move forward with, yes, we've got our flooding issues. Yes, we've got the things from COVID, but right now, our methodology with our plan here with TxDOT and HJC is to have this thing in place by next summer, which should be a goal that I came into this with, and I'm very excited about it as we move forward.
Yeah, same. I mean, we're so focused on transportation with our plan, and I don't think ours will be necessarily completed by summer, Judge. I think you guys will beat us to the punch on that one, but certainly the initial assessment. Another thing we're focused on with the growth is housing. Affordable housing is a big challenge in our area, and especially as we take flooding head on, there are areas that we know no matter what projects we do, they're always going to flood. And so in order to be able to buy those folks out, we got to have another place for them to live. But then these homes were affordable because they were in the floodplain. And so it's working on that. It's become a big issue. A lot of people really want to sell, particularly after the rain event. But the question is, can they find adequate housing that is equivalent somewhere else? So we are looking at that holistically as well for the first time. What we know, there's a need, we know anecdotally there's a big problem, but exactly where and exactly what can we do about it? So we're going down that path. And then just trying to think about economic opportunity and about education. You know, you hear, I saw a study out of Harvard Business School, and the professor was talking about two career paths. And one is the if you are like a pharmacy assistant, or if you're some sort of tech job, and you know, both require the same amount of training, and it would be the kind of thing where you young person walks into a job fair and they just so happen to go to the pharmacy assistant table because they've got, you know, treats or what the other person gotten up, they go down the path. Realistically, that career path has a much lower ceiling than the equivalent training tech path that was presented in the story, and the latter might be more necessary for our region. And so that's what we're trying to look at, is what are the jobs of the future? How can we steer our young people toward them? And how can we also incentivize broadly economic development in the county? And finally, you know, on the education point is early childhood education, which is tied to childcare. We've really seen the impacts of that in Harris County during the pandemic, but more broadly, it's a big issue that keeps us also from maximizing our potential and people's potential as workers, because obviously their family comes first, but there just isn't enough quality childcare. And on the other hand, we know that quality childcare leads to much, much better outcomes for children later in life, in terms of educational outcomes, in terms of lack of involvement with the justice system, et cetera, et cetera. So that was going to be our big project this year. We're cooking something up, so we are still making progress, perhaps not to the degree we were hoping, but certainly I hope to be bringing something to the next court or two, and in that vein, because we've got to move on the early childhood education, and then just thinking very strategically about the jobs of the future. The things are changing. You know, we got to remain the energy capital of the world. We got to face hard truths of where energy is heading, of where transportation is heading, of our flood control challenges, because they're going to catch up with us whether we want them to or not. So that's what we're trying to do, is to stay ahead and not be catching up to those challenges.
Okay, thank you very much, Judge Hidalgo and Judge Keough, for taking the questions today and for the remarks that you've made. Again, we greatly appreciate you being here today to update us and to help us honor our award recipients. And again, I really want to congratulate Darren Willer, Jonathan Holly in Harris County Flood Control, and Quincy Allen for your awards. We greatly appreciate what you've done for the North Houston region and the North Houston Association. I have one announcement to make, and that's going to be quick. An upcoming North Houston Association event is going to be on October 27th. We are going to have an in-person luncheon, not virtual, in-person luncheon featuring Congressman Dan Crenshaw. Registration is on our website. It'll be our last luncheon of the year, and it will also be where we elect our board for next year. So please plan on joining us on October the 27th for Congressman Dan Crenshaw. And finally, we're going to run our sponsor video to close out our program. Again, I want to thank you all for joining us today. Have a great day and stay safe. Here's our video, our sponsor video.
Thank you all.